Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to the A Trip to the Moon podcast, a live special on transfer deadline day. And as we click the go live button, Tranmere are just in the process of announcing the arrival of a new signing. Zeke Obiero has arrived from Leyton Orient. He is the first addition to the squad today. And well, after Lewis Warrington's arrival yesterday, it certainly means the central midfield has been bolstered. And who knows, there might be more deals to come yet this evening. So to discuss all of the business conducted through January and a look at what has and hasn't happened today, delighted to be joined back on the show by our resident live show expert, Nigel Adderley, and Tom Boys is back on the pod as well. Not that you're not an expert, Tom, it's just that Nigel seems to end up on every single live show that we do.
Only because I take your call, Matt.
Exactly that. You're the one who answers. Well, it started off well. It's better than last year when we hit stop and 10 minutes later they announced the arrival of two players. So, first of all, Zeke Obiero through the door. What do we know about him, Nigel?
Well, he's very highly rated at Orient, and I think he signed a new deal at the start of the season. And looking online today, a lot of Orient fans are wondering why he's not been in their first team, because obviously they lost in the playoffs last season. And I looked at the bottom of the League One table today, and I didn't quite realise how close they were to possibly going down this season because they're in a real scrap now. But apparently, he's a midfielder with a bit of pace, and that's exactly what we need. And it remains to be seen whether Obiero and Warrington will be the midfield on Saturday. But it's someone else in the position that we need.
Yeah, I've just been frantically Googling that name as you've been speaking, so I appreciate you going first, Nige. Yeah, he looks like he's come through at Tottenham, so obviously good pedigree there. The bits you've seen online, Orient fans seem to have a little bit split opinion, but quite a few of them think he could be part of their squad. So you'd have to take that as positive, and I think just from a couple of clips, he looks an athletic midfielder, which I think we're certainly crying out for. So I think it's another body. It's a positive one. It was central midfield after the Warrington signing the position you expected it to be today? Probably not, but I think him and Warrington in the midfield, that certainly strengthens that area for us.
If you'd asked me going into the window what were the two key areas that needed strengthening, I'd have said a goalkeeper, given Luke McGee's absence, and that's not a slight on Joe. I just think that's a position they're painfully thin in. But I'd have said centre midfield is an area that badly needed addressing and has done for several years, and they've attempted to address it over the years. It just hasn't been right. The players they've brought in, they've now signed two over the last 24 hours. We know a fair bit about Warrington from his first loan spell. We know a little less about Obiero, obviously, but it's clear that is an area they felt needed some surgery as well, Nigel.
Yeah, and it's fairly obvious that that they're right on the basis of what we've seen, not just this season, but the last few seasons. How many teams have we seen, home or away, just run through massive gaps in our midfield? Richie Smallwood was signed to try and help sort that out. Clearly, it hasn't worked. Noah Kenner, I thought, did quite well in the first half at the weekend, but he's clearly someone that Crosby has had less faith in the longer the season has gone on. And trying to rebuild the midfield in the middle of the season is not a good thing, but I think it's something that we've had to do. But I agree with you. Lack of a goalkeeper signing at the moment, and who knows, a deal sheet may have been put in before 7 o'clock, and we may learn something later on in the evening. But we needed a goalkeeper because if Joe Murphy goes over on his ankle or gets sent off, we're relying on a goalkeeper who may turn out to be good in the long term, but isn't quite ready at the moment. And I think that an experienced goalkeeper should have been top of the priorities.
Yeah, I'd agree with that last statement. And I think particularly with the backroom staff or lack of staff situation, if you could have Joe back concentrating on the coaching side, I think you would see a benefit to that as well. I think Joe is he's a smart guy. He's been around football a long time in a lot of good teams, and having his eye from a coaching perspective on some of the defensive frailties we're seeing, I don't think that'd be the worst thing. At the moment, he is still a good goalkeeper at this level. I don't think we can argue with that. Yes, he's made a mistake, but most goalkeepers at this level do make mistakes. But he's made a hell of a lot of good saves, and if you didn't know he was 44, there probably wouldn't be the hysteria around it. But I would agree. I think for everyone's sake, it would be probably better to have someone in. Ideally, in my world, a young goalkeeper permanently that we can give some minutes to. He then potentially could become someone who can challenge Luke McGee next season. Sort of thought we might go down that route. I saw, was it Harvey Davis, who'd been on loan at Crawley from Liverpool, got sort of called back from there, a local boy, and I thought, okay, is that someone we might look at? But yeah, I think in terms of the midfield, I don't think we can complain at what's happened there. We've got more mobility, more energy, and I would suggest more quality as well in both of those players. I would say we've got, depending how we set up, a bit of competition for places there as well now with Blacker, with Finley. Like say, Kenner did well the first half the other day. You've got Smallwood who may or may not go out the door. So it's going to be interesting how we jiggle them all together.
So just to clear up a few things, both of you have alluded to the fact that there could still be announcements to come. So although the window has shut at 7 o'clock, I believe clubs have a 2-hour period of grace now to finalise deals, as long as they have submitted a deal sheet to show that a transfer is happening by 7 o'clock tonight. So there is another 2 hours now where the final I's can be dotted and T's can be crossed, if you like, before everything gets finalised. So who knows, there might be more to come from Tranmere's point of view over the remaining hour and 53 minutes. Also, we've now got news on Obiero's arrival in terms of what it is. It is a loan from Leyton Orient until the end of the season. He says, I'm really happy to be here, excited to start a new journey and just ready to get going. I would say I'm more attacking minded. I do like to work hard. I do like to track back, but more going forward, I dribble and get goals and assists. That's more my game. Andy Crosby, we're really pleased to bring Zeke into the club. He's a young player with potential and a fantastic attitude. He's technically good, plays with energy and bravery. We believe this is the perfect environment for him to continue his development, and we're excited to help him take the next step in his career. The thing that immediately jumps out at me from that is that he's a loan player. Now, we know that you can only have 5 loan players in your matchday squad. His arrival means Tranmere now have 6 on their books, but the kind of reading between the lines that we can do there, although the club haven't announced it, is that the Jones injury that he picked up on Saturday is a fairly serious one. There are some reports doing the rounds about Will Tayman not being in particularly decent health after the weekend either. So Tranmere have moved to bring in a lone player, knowing that they can now fit all of those that are actually fit and can get on the park onto the pitch. I mean, Jayden Joseph's out for another 9 weeks as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? And I know people often question, the long-term policies of the club, but when loan players who've been through the door 5 minutes get injured, you just think, is this just a very unlucky season, or is there's something else going on? But I think Jones is a disappointment if he's out for a lengthy spell, because from what little we've seen so far, I think he looks decent, and I think he would be someone who could complement Whittaker and the central striker, whether that's Ironside or Dennis, because I think he could either play down the middle or he can do a decent job wide. And I was at Barnet last Tuesday, and he did okay in a poor team performance. I thought he was one of the better players. So, I hope Taman's fit, because I've been impressed by what I've seen with him so far, and I think that it says a good deal about our defensive unit at the moment that a kid comes in and looks to be the best player straight away.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the worrying / impressive thing from a recruitment standpoint is the loan players, bar a couple this year, have all been really, really good additions. You go through like Joseph, Jones, Taman, Blacker, who am I forgetting? I forgot someone there, haven't I? But in the main,
Harris.
Easily forgettable. Sorry, Salem. Yeah. In fairness to Taylor, and I will say this to be fair to him, I think his position isn't really one that fits into our system. So that was a bit of a funny signing and maybe a bit of a late in the day panic one, I would say. But I think in terms of the young players we've brought in on loan, all of them have been drastically improved on what we've seen in previous years. I agree. I think Jones was exactly what we needed at that top end of the pitch, someone running in behind, stretching defences, bringing real energy from the front. And if you feel if he could have got a run of games with Ironside, we might have seen an improved Joe Ironside with that as well. As it is, he's picked up an injury. By all accounts, it's not a great one. And we're sort of back to square one because we don't have another striker at the football club at this moment in time who can do that role. You wonder, with the current climates, like Sam Taylor's not getting any minutes out on loan at Linfield, do you pull him back? Because he's not set the world alight over there, but Sam has pace, and we are struggling for options at that end of the pitch unless something dramatic happens in the next couple of hours.
Well, we will see what happens on that front, but I would agree with you that pace is the key thing that Tranmere are lacking, and that will bring us on to Amari Patrick very shortly and everything that's gone on there over the last few days. But if we first do look at Lewis Warrington's return to Tranmere, a 2.5-year deal from him. Walsall fans seem happy to see the back of him. I have to say, I'm pretty happy to see him back at Tranmere. He was playing when he first arrived at the club. He was very young. He was playing in a much better Tranmere team than the one that we're seeing at the moment. And he was someone who wanted the football a lot, wanted to pass it, wanted to move, wanted to get forward. He liked to get it on the half turn and spin and see what options he had from his teammates. And if I'm honest, I don't look through that Tranmere team at the moment and see many players who look like they want the ball and look like they know what they're going to do with it when they've got it, Nigel. So, without knowing too much or having seen too much of him during his time at Walsall, I'm actually really pleased that Lewis Warrington's back at Tranmere.
Yeah, if it encourages us to keep the ball on the ground, then that's going to be a good thing, because one thing is certain: if the ball's up in the air, we're not going to see the best of Lewis Warrington, because he's someone who likes to get the ball from the defenders, try and turn and try and create something. And I know that by the time he joined us previously, I think we just had that defeat to Forest Green, and things were maybe slightly on a downward slope. But he was still a good player, and he still looked to be the sort of player that was going to improve. And I'm slightly surprised he's not made more of his career since. I'm not surprised that he hasn't really fitted in at Walsall, because when you see the sort of player he is, then it's not really the sort of football that Walsall play. And it's not a criticism of how they do it, because they're clearly, having another good season. But they're fairly direct. They get the ball quickly forward towards some very pacey players. And I wouldn't think he would fit into that system. And it's a bit like us signing Ryan Watson a few years ago. Good player, but just didn't work with the way that we wanted to play. But if Lewis Warrington is given license to really show his full array of skills between now and the end of the season and moving on, and I think he'd be a really good signing. And I think he's someone who's coming back to the area as well, and I think that would help him.
Yeah, I'm delighted to see Lewis back. I think this is the type of signing we should be doing more of. 23 years of age still, so he's still young, but with quite a decent bit of football league experience now. Local, knows the club, has been in there before. He won't be shocked by the atmosphere and the expectation of Tranmere. And when he was here last time, he was certainly a player. He would ask for the ball off the defenders. He would back himself on the ball. He would try and get it on the deck and play it forward. And I think he's going to improve that blend in the team. I think one of the things I've felt all season is we haven't had players who really complement each other very well. But I think I'm pretty sure Warrington played with Whittaker at Everton as well at youth level, so there could be a bit of connection there. Finley, Blacker, the Orient boy, these are players who I'm not seeing the Orient boy play, but from what I'm seeing and hearing, it seems like players who will want the ball on the deck, will want to play more, which was more the football Andy Crosby was playing when he first took over. Like I remember being really refreshed by his first few games, in that we were very aggressive with the defensive line. That was my first observation, but there was then a willingness to get the ball, get it on the floor, not playing 50 passes between the goalie and defender, but playing a bit more technical football. And we've seen this season where it has been very, very front to back. It's not worked. I know he will point and say we're scoring goals, but those goals have generally been moments of magic from Patrick and Whittaker. So I do wonder if there's been a bit of reflection, a bit of a shift this January. Even the defensive player like Will Tammons come in from Everton, looks a really like he's going to have a really bright future. And again, is someone who has pace, can do that defending that Crosby likes his back three to do, be very aggressive going for the ball, the pace to get back in, and he's comfortable on the ball. So all the signings so far in January have seemed more suited to a more technical style of football, and certainly a more energetic style of football, I would say, as well. So I'm hoping that the club has looked at things and thought we need to do things differently here. And certainly Lewis, I hope, is going to be a big part of that for the next couple of seasons.
I do wonder as well, kind of picking up on the point that you made there, if it does, with Warrington arriving, pull us back to kind of the job that Hendry was doing so successfully in that midfield last year. Because to me, Warrington is a fairly similar player to Hendry, in that he'll drive you forward from the centre circle and try and feed it into whoever you've got up front. And that is going to benefit a Joe Ironside. It's going to benefit a Christian Dennis or whoever ends up playing up there. I mean, to be honest, Tranmere don't have many options up there now, with no Davison, no Jennings, and potentially no Jones either. So to me, if Warrington can play that Hendry role, that's the missing link from last season, I think, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, we've all forgotten how effective Regan Hendry was. And interestingly, he's not played a huge amount for Mansfield this season. I'm not sure if he's been injured or been out of favour at times. He made a great start, but hasn't been featuring too much recently. And I did wonder at the back of my mind whether he's someone we might have tried to maybe get back on loan. But we need to try and get back to the way that we were playing in the spring last year. And I mean, Tom's absolutely right. And I know that Andy Crosby benefited from a certain extent to not be Nigel Adkins, but at the same time, he did do things differently. He tried to put his own imprint on the team straight away, and the results drastically improved. And you know, he's not been helped by injuries this season. You take out McGee and O'Connor from this team, and they are big misses. They are the way that he wanted to play, and they were key to why the team was so good under him towards the end of last season. But I take the point you made there, Matt, as well. It's not just about trying to improve the team by bringing in new players. It's about getting the best out of some of the players that are already there. And Joe Ironside is key to that. And we've not seen the best of Joe Ironside in any game, really. But on the odd occasion we have seen the flashes of what he's capable of. It's when we've seen good service into him, like the cross from Davison at Walsall, and even the cross in the Pizza Cup game against Blackpool. If he gets that sort of service, I think he will score goals for us. But the problem is, we haven't been delivering any crosses. Bristow and Norman at the moment seem incapable of picking anybody out with a cross. And I think dealing with that as well, dealing with the service towards the strikers, has to be better. And I think that the business that we've done so far at the end of this window is something that can improve on that.
Yeah, I'd agree completely with Ironside, and that's with the James Plant edition. I mean, I'll confess, I know very little about the lad. He came on Saturday, looked tidy enough, put one good ball into the box where there was no strikers attacking it, but we've got to get better delivery into that box, and certainly more regularly as well. I don't know how many crosses we put in a game. We seem to put a lot of aimless long throws in a game, but if you look at how many real good quality balls go into the box, it's not many, and that is how you get the best out of Joe Ironside. I think the other way you get the best out of him, like at Cambridge when he had Paul Mullin running off his shoulder, is having a Dylan Jones running off his shoulder. Now, I don't think we're going to see an awful lot of that, sadly, and so far there isn't another player who can do that. I wonder about this Orient lad and how he's described himself there. Is he someone who might play one of those two number 10 positions and sort of be that midfield runner past a striker? Because that's the worrying thing at the moment. You're looking at the team, and it's been the Amari Patrick and Whittaker show so far in terms of trying to get a goal, and where are the goals going to be coming from the rest of the season? Amari today clearly isn't very happy with certain things. Is that going to affect how the rest of the season plays out? And then if we do go back to the sort of two number 10, well, not back to it, what we've been playing, the two number 10 system in Crosby, who is that one striker? Was last season Dennis was certainly the preferred option with that, which I like Christian Dennis. I know after his miss on Saturday, he's not in everyone's good books, but his movement and intelligence is, I think, well above anyone else. But at the same time, he's 35, and can he keep playing 90 minutes Tuesday, Saturday? I don't think he can. And the alternative, Joe Ironside, is a very different striker who has thrived in a front two. So there's certainly still pieces of the jigsaw that Crosby and the club have to work out.
There are, and if you're going to play with two number 10s, are they going to be Obiero and Warrington? And if so, where does that leave someone like Whittaker, who you can't really leave out, given he's been Tranmere's main goal threat over the last 2 or 3 months as well? So interesting, but it's a nice dilemma to have where we can talk about fitting 3 players into 2 positions as opposed to not wanting 2 of them to be on the park, as may have been the case with some players in recent weeks. You mentioned Amari Patrick there, so let's get on to him. And it's a fascinating scenario that has evolved around Amari Patrick. Rumours circulating at the weekend after he was left out of the squad on Saturday for the Salford game that he was set to leave the club. Andy Crosby came out post-match and was asked where Patrick was, and he just said it was his decision to leave him out of the squad, no more than that. And you then start to think, well, the guy's on the move. He's going to be off, and Tranmere are going to lose one of their most influential players come Monday evening. Now, as far as things stand, that isn't the case, but that is far from the end of the story. He has now deleted the post that he put on his Instagram page, but it was a fascinating message for any of you who missed it. He said, seeing all you guys message, so I'll address it. No one's refused to train or play. I was ready to be involved and got a call the morning of the game saying I'm not in the squad and not to come to the game either. So there's no need to message me crazy stuff. Thank you. I mean, it's not the kind of laundry you want airing in public, is it, Nige?
No, but we'll wait and see what happens in the rest of the evening. But it's the sort of thing he could come back from. I mean, it's possible that both he and the club thought a move was in the offing on Saturday, and that's why he was left out. I mean, it's an interesting bit to say he's told not to come to the game. I mean, you know, we've got no idea what's gone on. It's possible that nothing's gone on, but that struck me as being quite strange. But you know, players can come back, but the reality is he's out of contract, and we don't know if he's going to sign another deal. Otherwise, he's got 17 games to go. So if someone had come in with an offer of cash, I think we'd have to take it. And I know all the arguments about he's the one crowd pleaser we've got and he's a potential match winner. But the reality is, in 17 games' time, he probably won't be there unless there's some massive change. And it's interesting he came out. Maybe he was frustrated with getting, loads of messages on social media, and I don't blame him if he's frustrated with that, because I mean, he knows the true story, and of course on social media people will pepper you with rumours and ask you what's going on. So it's a really tricky one, and at the moment he's gone nowhere. And you look at Gillingham's social media feed. They seem to have said we've made our deadline day signing, and that's Omar Beckles, the central defender. So, on the face of it, at the moment, it doesn't look as though he's going there. But of course, we're playing games just like everybody else does in admin world on a transfer deadline night.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's a secret that Amari probably isn't the happiest player at the club when he plays left wing back. I think that's like, we don't need a confirmation from him or Crosby to tell that. And you wonder if something has gone on along those lines. I think when he came on at Barton, obviously he's come back from about 6 weeks out after his op, and he's not looked sharp as you would expect him not to be, because it's not like he's had a reserve game or an under-21s to sort of build his fitness up. He's playing catch up with that. Originally, I thought, have they just held him back for that reason, just to make sure he doesn't play, knacker himself and do damage? I don't think it is the case. I think there's clearly been a disagreement for him to be told not to come to the ground. I think that's pretty obvious now, and the way Crosby said it after the game, you could sense there was a bit of atmosphere there. I would agree with Nigel in that if there was an offer there, I think it would be smart to take it. I think something I've moaned at the club in the past for letting contracts run down, and whilst Amari isn't going to be sort of $500,000 or a huge fee, you would expect with his goal record and his ability that you might get something like 75, 100 grand for him. Certainly on a deadline day where players clubs are maybe scrambling around for players. As it is, it looks likely that he isn't leaving. I think there's a big test for Andy Crosby's man management now on how he can handle this situation and get the Amari that we've seen for Tranmere back on the pitch, performing like he can. And hopefully we get the end of the season and actually he's enjoying it, and he does sign an extension. I think that would be extremely optimistic looking at it right now, but football is funny. Things can change very, very quickly, but I think it's certainly a big test for Crosby and the football club in how they handle it now.
Yeah, it's an interesting scenario, isn't it? Because you don't want a player who is sulking and who has look, if they've been asked not to come to the ground, we're only speculating, but if they've been asked not to come to the ground, we can assume that's because the manager feels that it would be not a good thing to have them around the group at that present time. Maybe that speculation is wide of the mark, but that would be how I would read into it. If he's going to be back and his attitude is going to be exactly what it was at the back end of last season, for example, or at the start of this, then Tranmere are getting their best attacking unit back. And even if he has a left wing back, look, he had a lot of success there at the back end of last season. He is their main goal threat. He is the person who can make things happen and open them up. And let's be brutally honest, bar Ethan Bristow, he's the only one with a bit of pace about him as well. And that in itself adds a different dimension. And Nigel and I were chatting earlier today, and Nigel very rightly pointed out that when Patrick plays, teams double up on him. And when he's not there, they double up on Whittaker. Well, you can't double up on both of them.
Yeah, and as someone's just said in the chat here, we don't want Patrick to turn into another Hawks Atkins situation from last season, which didn't do anybody any favours. Now, it could all be sorted out. Look, by the end of the evening, things could have changed, and we could be having a very different conversation. But you know, it's not a good situation to have one of your key players saying what he said earlier on. Now, I know it's been deleted and yeah, but he did say it, and it's out there. And once you put something on social media, as we probably all found to our cost in the past, even if you delete it, someone will always have hold of it. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But you know, we've had some great moments watching Amari Patrick. I mean, I did a bit of maths earlier on before we knew we were coming on, and his goals were worth 13 points last season, and that basically kept us up. He was the Rob Apter of last season. Now his goals have not been so important this season. I think they've only been worth 2 points, but as we say, he's created opportunities for us because the opposition are worried about them. And when you've seen us play recently in the 5 games that we've lost, with the possible exception of Jones, I've not really seen too many opposition players or opposition teams be that worried about anybody else in the team. So, he's a threat. But at the same time, going back to what Tom said, it's absolutely right. If someone's come in and offered cash, you got to take it.
Yeah, I think as well, the start of the season, Whittaker and Patrick, they were having a few really good combinations as well in an attacking sense. And I don't think it's any secret that since they've not been together, the form's dropped off. Whether there's any offers on the table, that's obviously a different thing. Was it a play to try and force him out of the club? I mean, there's another conspiracy theory to put on the table, try and get him out and get a bit of cash in. I don't think it would be that. I think it looks like hopefully just a bit of handbags at the training ground that will be fixed. But I think the football club, and like I've said this for about 5 years now, it needs to start looking not just at the next sort of 4 months, where you would like to think, barring a complete capitulation, we won't go down, we're not going to go up. But what is that team going to look like for pre-season next year? Because if this run carries on and you get to the summer, the atmosphere's there. We've seen how hard it is for clubs to turn around that negativity that comes with it. I think Warrington is a good step in that it's a permanent player that is going to be a big part of our midfield next season, regardless of what owner, what manager is in there. The rest of the squad, it's loan players who can we turn some of them into permanent? I'd be surprised, certainly in Will Tammon and Joseph and Blacker's case, but you never know. So I was expecting today to maybe see a couple of young, under 23 type players come in, give them a few games to the end of the season, get them settled into the squad, permanent players who might kick on. You're at that time of the year now where a lot of them will be being told that, look, you're not getting a contract at Man City or Liverpool or wherever it is. So find yourself a club, and we've picked up a couple in the past like that. But if you look at this squad now and you think, right, first game of next season, and I appreciate that's looking like with a takeover that could affect things dramatically, and you say, how many of these players would you want in that starting 11 on the opening day? There's not an awful lot. And the ones that you probably would are players who come the summer, we could be fielding bids for Whittaker. Patrick could be out the door. The loan players will have gone back. So I was expecting a little bit more long-term looking at this window, but it does feel a little bit like cheap loan players, stick a couple of plasters and get through to the summer.
It's no Mather and Jackson, though.
Yeah, I was going to say Calvin Phillips has just signed for Sheffield United, so Billy Blacker might be available in the longer term. You never know. But I was just going to say, looking ahead to the summer, and I know we're talking about the transfer window tonight, a lot of the players currently in the first team are going to be out of contract. And you've got to ask the question as well, how many of those would we necessarily want to see playing in the first game of next season? I know we've got players like Whittaker and Warrington now and other players who signed 2-year deals when they arrived last summer, but we've got quite a few deals for experienced players expiring. And do we actually have that clear out that we always say we need? And sometimes we think we're having a clear out, and then we end up signing a couple of them on for another couple of years.
Well, players that are under contract for next year, off the top of my head, McGee, O'Connor, Ironside, obviously now under contract as well as Warrington. Did Smith sign for 2 years as well? I think he did. I'm trying to remember if Brough signed for 2 years. So there's a few. I imagine Bristow's got the option of a year on his contract. I apologise if I'm wrong on that. So there's a few around there, but you're right. There will be huge, huge changes. Let's talk about a player who we may be expected to leave Tranmere today. Graham Bailey, who is he's not the player we expected to leave Tranmere. He's the football and transfer correspondent for Team Talk, and he has tweeted within the last 2 minutes that Bristol Rovers have made a late swoop on Tranmere to bring in former Middlesbrough midfielder Richie Smallwood. Could he be? I mean, Tom's eyes have widened there at the prospect of Richie Smallwood going to Bristol Rovers. I wouldn't. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised that another League Two club were perhaps making that swoop. But I think we know that it would be best for the player and probably best for the club if that marriage ended in divorce before this window shut, Nigel.
Yeah, and again, he was a player. When we looked at it, we thought, great. Someone who won promotion last season. Bradford fans spoke very highly of him, and in the opening weeks of the season, he and Kenner looked quite good as a combination because Kenner was the destructive force, and Smallwood was just trying to set the tempo of games. And when we had that flurry at the start of the season, when Patrick, of course, was flying down the left-hand side, things looked good, but the longer the season has gone on, clearly his confidence has gone. Maybe Andy Crosby's confidence in him has also gone as well, although he's always had the armband when he's been there. But it does make you wonder what other clubs see, because if you'd seen Richie Smallwood play the last 10 games or so, is he the sort of player you'd be signing to try and keep you in the Football League? Maybe Steve Evans believes you can get something else out of him. I don't know. I mean, it's a shame it's not worked out because I thought he was. I mean, we've been linked with players like Richie Smallwood for years and years and years, and by the time he eventually arrives, it's clearly not happened for him. But I am not surprised he's going, but I'm surprised he's maybe going to another League Two club.
Yeah, it's. I think in Bristol Rovers, we know they've got money, so they're maybe willing to gamble a little bit till the end of the season, depending on what that deal looks like. I would imagine they'll take over his contract or something along those lines. I think it's been a surprise to everyone, Smallwood, in that last season he played nearly every game for Bradford, and you can't have been bad. I know people will say he had quality around him, which he did, but he's still. I saw him play a few games last season, and he was a solid player. I remember him playing at Rotherham with Will Volks for, I think that was when they were in the Championship, and he's been a captain of clubs who have done well as well. So, and multiple clubs as well, by the way. So you can't be a bad leader to be captain of numerous football clubs and have success with them. What has happened here is it's not incomprehensible, because it's Tranmere, and I think he's another year older. His mobility certainly doesn't look like the player I remember seeing, which is understandable because he's now 35. But I think he's got sucked in by the sort of negative vibe at the club at the moment, and he's obviously had some poor performances. He's acknowledged that himself, and when you're in that position, it is hard to turn it around. I'd say probably even more so for someone in his position. It's not like he can suddenly dribble past two men and put it in the top corner to sort of change his fortunes. He's in a role where it's just win the ball and pass it off, isn't it? So I think if we can shift him, we look like we're quite well stocked in the midfield now with options. It's probably a good move for everyone, and good luck to him if it does happen.
It also means as well we have got some fairly decent earners off the wage bill, at least partially in January. I mean, Josh Davison, I understand, was someone who was on a very good wage, and I would be surprised if Cheltenham are paying all of his wages, but they'll be paying some of them. So we freed up some cash there. Smallwood, I would imagine, as the club captain, would have been on a decent wage as well. So I think that we've done some relatively smart business. And if you bring in clubs or players from other clubs on loan, then obviously we're able to do deals there as well. So financially, I think it could be quite a good window in that respect.
Some rather cheeky messages coming in, which I am enjoying. Phil said Bristol Rovers must be resigned to relegation already, and another Phil. In fact, I think we've only exclusively got Phils in the comments at the moment. Phil Kenny says, "How much are we paying Bristol Rovers for Smallwood to go there?" It's an
Bristol
interesting
Rovers
point
have
you
just
made.
tweeted out time to get involved on deadline day, so they're going to release a signing very soon.
Well, there you go. Well, we'll stick around for that at the very least. Be interesting to see what the reaction to that is from a Bristol Rovers point of view on X. Actually, I'll keep my eye on that. Look, if we look at the window as a whole, as you say, Davison out the door, albeit on loan. It looks like Smallwood's going over the next few minutes. Effectively lost Connor Jennings during this transfer window. I know he signed a new contract, but he's not going to play again this season. So that's three players that are not going to play this season. But coming in, you've had, well, we don't know the extent of the injury, but Jones, Tamman obviously have arrived. McGowan has extended his contract. Warrington has come in. Obiero's come in as well. There might be someone that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Ultimately, are Tranmere a stronger side as we sit here now, knowing what we know, than they were on the 31st of December, Nigel?
I think we are, although we should have got a goalkeeper. And I don't know how close we were to signing a goalkeeper, because I think that's still the key position. And that's no disrespect to Joe, as everyone says, because it's true. I just think we need better cover in that area. But Taman, I think, is a good defender. We needed to improve in that area. The midfield, as we've discussed, I think is clearly improved as well. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Patrick over the evening, whether he stays or whether he will go. I think if he stays, then I think going forward, we're looking pretty good. But again, I never thought we were going to sign a striker in this window, because we signed Ironside in January. In August. So I think we are a stronger team, and I think that the results will gradually improve because we've got these new players in. Because I think there'll be fresh blood, some fresh ideas, and when you compare it to last January, as you said, when we signed the two kids from United who barely featured, I think it's light and day.
Yeah, I think that, like, the glass half empty people, they could look at it and say, well, we've shifted some decent earners. If Smallwood goes, Davison's out. Saunders obviously went a while ago, but you've cleared that, and then what you've brought in, Lewis Warrington aside, who you would imagine is taking Smallwood's wage probably, is very sort of cheap, short term type of signings. I can't imagine Everton are going to be asking us to foot much for the loan player. Norwich will be similar. If you're playing them, these clubs will generally put a lot of the wages. I think the budget is there for us to be doing a lot better than we have this season, and I don't think we're where we are because we're sort of underfunded on the actual first team side. I think we've wasted, or we're not getting the most out of some of those higher wage players. I imagine Brough is on decent money. Smith will be on decent money. Obviously Smallwood we've spoken about. Like Ironside, we're not seeing anywhere near the value for money you would want from those key players. I do feel we've gone more of the right direction in the type of player, even if they're not ours, in that we've got young players who are on the up in their career, they're enthusiastic, they've got more mobility, they've got good sort of technical ability, all of them so far from what I've seen. But there is still that part of me, and I'm sure other fans, which look at it and think that we're still bobbing along with Joe having to play in goal at 44. We've got Crosby and Parky, the only two coaches. I know Alan Morgan does it part-time, but it just feels like a very managed, which again is understandable if you're trying to sell the club, but trying to do it as cheap and the bare minimum as possible, really, for me. Considering the start of the season, it was, we want to look up, we want to kick on as a football club, we want to be challenging for the playoffs, was the noises that were being made. We are now sat a long way from the playoffs, and we certainly haven't made the signings to say that we're trying to do that. So it's I don't want to hammer the club too much, because we seem to be doing that all the time these days, but it just feels like, right, we'll do just enough just to get by and keep everyone slightly less peed off than they are at the moment, rather than, right, let's go out, let's get 2 or 3 really good signings that'll kick us on. Like, I mean, one I saw today was Callum Kavanagh went to Oldham on a 2.5-year little nippy striker that I think would have fit us really well. I think he scored against us a couple of times as well, but like, I thought a couple of those type of signings, just so we're not having to do tons in the summer. But obviously we don't know where the takeover situation is, and if that is imminent, obviously you're not gonna do a lot of signing. But I still feel we've done the bare minimum that you would expect.
Bristol Rovers have confirmed their latest signing. It is Joe Quigley, who arrives from Oldham, so not Richie Smallwood as of yet. And the disappointment within the comments section here is an absolute wonder to see. But you never know. There's still an hour and 13 minutes for deals to be completed. Don't worry, we're not going to go on that long, because everyone on here needs to get away and have their tea. But there's no Only Connect to watch tonight, so that does give you slightly less motivation to leave.
It's only Sunderland against Burnley on Sky as well, isn't it? So
it is, yeah. Well, I did want to bring up the point of a goalkeeper, though, and it's an interesting one. I've seen a few people have messaged to say, not necessarily on this chat, but in general, when I've put things on Twitter, saying that they didn't see the point in signing a goalkeeper this window. They saw it as maybe a waste of funds for a club that isn't going to go up and isn't going to go down this season. And you may as well just use that money to strengthen the side elsewhere, particularly because any goalkeeper who comes in, they ain't going to be challenging Luke McGee once Luke McGee gets back to fitness next season. But the interesting thing for me is we've seen what Barrett is like when he's come into the side. And I think we'd largely agree that Tranmere looked a little bit more unsettled with him in the team than they did with Murphy. And he is an inexperienced young goalkeeper, so that's only going to be natural. But Joe is 44. He is going to be more susceptible to injury than he was 10, 15 years ago, or any other younger keeper. And the really interesting thing from my point of view is I know of goalkeepers who have been offered to Tranmere during this window, and the answer has been no. Now, I don't know if that's because they'd already maxed out their loans at that point and they kind of felt, what's the point in bringing in another loan goalkeeper when there's players elsewhere on the field? But the option has been there and they've decided against it, from what I understand.
yeah, and why not get a goalkeeper in now, and they can fight for the number 1 jersey with McGee next season, unless they have somebody lined up in the summer. And there has been some forward planning, and they're just thinking we'll get through to the end of the season, and they're taking the view that we're not going up, we're not going down. But I mean, what if Joe does pick up an injury again, or we have a situation where he has to leave the squad for a couple of weeks, or gets a red card? I mean, he got booked for time wasting on Tuesday night at Barnet, and was absolutely fuming about it. And I thought he was going to talk himself into a second yellow at one point. Things like that could happen, and then we're left with a goalkeeper that, as you say, neither the fans or many of his teammates possibly have a huge amount of confidence in him. I know he kept the clean sheet against Harrogate, but he made a couple of errors in subsequent games, and it's just not great to have the situation where we have 2 goalkeepers, one of whom should be coaching, as Tom made the point earlier on, and the other one possibly isn't up to it. And I'd hope we've moved on from that. The situation we had a few years ago, where we went through a variety of goalkeepers, none of whom were really anything near what we needed. We got McGee in, of course, and that sorted that out, and he'll still be around next season, which is very good news. But it's a key position because it sets the tone for the entire team. And if you've got a good goalkeeper, they always say they're worth 10 points a season or 15 points a season. Look what Eric Nixon used to do for us, going way back. You have a goalkeeper, their confidence, their abilities, they radiate throughout the entire team. And I'm not saying that Joe Murphy isn't doing that, but at the same time, he would be much better served coaching a goalkeeper rather than having to play every week.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, regardless, in the close season, we are going to have to sign a goalkeeper because we need someone to challenge or be there if anything happens to Luke again. Otherwise, you're back in the same position of, right, Joe's 45 and now he's the backup goalkeeper. I mean, that cannot happen. It could with Tranmere, probably never, not any other football club, but it just feels a wasted chance. I mean, there was a lad who he played for Crewe against us, actually, Sam Waller from Burnley, and he's just signed for Harrogate today, I've seen, permanently. And like someone like that, or like Harvey Davis at Liverpool, who is young, can come in and be an understudy to Luke McKee next year, but be someone who you think, yeah, if anything happens to Luke, Luke's coming from a full year out of football as well, and any physio will tell you that with that comes risk the following season. So we've got to have someone at the club ready if that situation arises. I would prefer it to be a young goalie who's one of our own, who has played 15 games between now and the end of the season, knows League Two, has shown that they can handle being at this level. And then, like I say, they can play the Pizza Cup, they can fill in for games if and when needed, and we've not got this emergency goalkeeper situation running on and on. I feel a little bit sorry for Jack Barrett in that he's been chucked straight back out and not given, in my opinion, a fair crack to show that he can do that and evolve into that type of goalkeeper. I think he looks very much an under-23 goalkeeper. His command of his penalty area when it's a through ball and he comes out is really, really good. Physically, he's obviously been caught on a couple of corners and teams started to exploit that. But let's not remember Joe Murphy got caught with that against Barrow as well. So it's not exclusive just to Jack that. So
and Walsall.
And Walsall, yeah. So I feel a little bit sorry for Jack as well, in that he's come in from Blackburn and he looks like he's not going to play any football because a 44-year goalkeeper coach is playing ahead of him. And albeit Joe is a great goalkeeper and a great servant to this football club, but what's like the long game with Jack Barrett? Like, is it someone that we thought we might sign in the summer? If it is, well, test him now and see it. If it isn't, then it just feels a little bit of a waste of his time and a waste of ours having him at the club, taking up a loan spot that we could be using for another position. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the situation is. I know sometimes you get clubs have cancelled contracts as well of players, and I think you can still sign them over the next month or so, can't you? If there's someone in that mould, but it seems to be everything with this football club. Like, we'll deal with it tomorrow instead of, right, we need a number 2 goalkeeper. We've needed it all season. We're going to need it in the summer. There's got to be someone out there now that we can give some minutes to, get Joe back on the coaching staff, hopefully get him looking at this leaky defence and helping solve that problem.
I'm surprised Blackburn didn't recall him. If they're looking at his development as a young footballer and they see that he's behind a 44-year-old in the pecking order, I'm surprised that Blackburn have allowed him to stay, unless they were told he will get some game time later in the season.
It's not lost on me that Tom and I both reached for our water at the same time there, which was a wonderful moment of symmetry. We'll wrap this up in 5 minutes, which will ultimately mean that Smallwood's departure will be announced. Amari Patrick's £10 million transfer to Wrexham will be signed and sealed, and Tranmere will bring in Cristiano Ronaldo, given that he's gone on strike over in Saudi as well. So that's all to come once we hit the stop button. Don't you worry. But to finish, I mean, are we happy, Nigel, with what has been done today? Or look, and I know it's hard to say that more could have been done, because I'm sure that the club were attempting to do more, and we still don't know if what's out there is the full extent of everything's happening. But let's say that it is. Let's say that there is going to be no more news apart from perhaps Smallwood's departure, which would make sense given Warrington's arrival. Would you be happy with what they've done today?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the kid from Orient sounds like a promising signing and might give us something different. With Lewis Warrington, I think will be a very good signing in the longer term. Um, I think it depends on the injury to Taman and Jones as well. And I think if Jones is a bad injury, then I don't know what the terms of his loan deal were. Whether we could have actually cancelled that and tried to get somebody else in, or whether they're confident he will be able to play a role between now and the end of the season. So yeah, I think that they've gone out. They could have said, "Look, we don't think we're going down. We'll do nothing." We've seen that in the past, and that sort of complacency can really cause problems, particularly with what's going on elsewhere in the club. But despite the uncertainty over the takeover, as far as we're concerned, the club do seem to have been proactive in this window by both getting players out who might be on decent money who aren't going to play, and bringing in some players who might actually improve us. And we'll see what happens with Patrick. I think if we get money for him, I think that's a good deal. But at the same time, if he's playing and he's focused, then that's going to be to our benefit, although probably only over the next 17 games.
Yeah, I'm not sure happy and Tranmere are two words that go together with me at the moment. I feel that Crosby and the recruitment guys have done a very good job at shuffling the pack with what they've had to work with. They've obviously had to get players out to get them in. I think the loans that have come in will, like I say, a lot of that wage, I'm sure, is being fussied from their clubs. The Jones situation, if that comes out, that injury is a lot worse and we haven't replaced him, I don't think that looks very good on the football club at all, given that he has been like a very bright spark since he's come in, and we haven't got another player at the football club who can do that role. I think that would be borderline negligent. Again, I wouldn't look at the manager and the recruitment staff on that. I'm sure they'll have names. I'm sure they'll be trying. I think, yeah, I'll go back to it. I think they've done a bare minimum. I think we're lucky that Newport and Harrogate are as bad as they are, or it would have been a much more panicky transfer window than it's been. But yeah, I think Crosby and the recruitment team I'll give a pass to. The other people at the football club, I'm still not a big fan of.
Well, we will see if there is any more to come over the next hour or so. Tranmere have left things late in announcing them before. Maybe not quite the excitement. Was it the 2020 deadline day when Cook and Vaughan both arrived? I think it might have been that, January 2020. Maybe not quite the excitement of that this year, but certainly one
David
player
Nugent, 2021 as well, wasn't it?
Oh, how could I forget? David Nugent. Yeah.
Well, that was a case of
Might be
man,
more
that was a
mobile
case
than
of
some
bad
of our
planning
strikers.
because we basically gambled on Vaughan being fit for the rest of the season, and of course he wasn't, and we didn't really have a plan B. And I just hope we don't have something similar with Murphy. I still don't think we'll be anywhere near the bottom two, but as Tom says, we're fortunate that the bottom two have been so poor, but it won't be the case next season, and that's why the recruitment for the summer's got to start now.
It does indeed. Well, we will wrap it up there, guys, because I've taken up far too much of your evening as it is. But thank you to both of you for joining us to give your thoughts on what has happened so far today and what it means for Tranmere going further forward as well. If you have enjoyed what you've watched, please do sign up to the podcast. A trip to the moonpod.co.uk is the address for that. It costs you £3 a month, but you get 3 episodes a week for that, including a review of every match and a look ahead to every game as well. We've got our next show out tomorrow morning. Alan Thompson is our guest. He was a goalkeeping coach in the Tranmere Academy for well over a decade. He's got some great stories to tell about the likes of Warwick Rimmer, John Achterberg, John McMahon, and many more as well. So that'll be out at about 7:30 tomorrow morning. If you do subscribe, you can listen to us through the Patreon app and through Spotify as well. But also please hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube as well, where you can get some extended free clips. Thank you to all of you for watching. We'll catch you tomorrow.